So here we are again, in front of Blender, with a new video for you. Now this new video was brought about by somebody on YouTube that asked an immediate comment right after I said after I made my video about tips on updating Truck to the latest version. Well, he asked, can you show how to AO bake something? Because that's not something I know how to do. And I can. And we will. So let's get started. So we're in our favorite program. We're going to load up the High Hood 367 that I have yet to put in game. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of things on my way to getting this ready. That's probably going to be a little different for you depending on what you want to do. And I'm going to explain that right now. I use a program called TexTools. You'll see it up here on the left-hand side. Actually, let me turn screencast on and done. Okay. So up on the left-hand side here, you'll see this thing that says TexTools. It's available on this, these tabs here. So what is TexTools? TexTools is an add-on for Blender that does a lot of extra things over and above baking. It does UV layout things. It creates a mesh texture from your model. It does a whole bunch of stuff that I don't use it for, similar to Blender itself. So we're going to go over specifically how to bake something in TexTools. So you'll want to go ahead and pick that up. It is on GitHub. I will leave the link in the description below. You load it like any other add-on to Blender. You'll add it just like the SCS tools, the Blender tools, or Converter Pix wrapper, or any of those things that you've done before. You're going to add this the same way. So let's get started. Now, you can see let's go back out to layout mode. So you can see over on the side here, I have hood. I have this hood here, right? So this is listed as truck paint primary. This is listed as truck paint primary. So all of these things and the back here, this is all truck paint primary, right? So we want all those together, but I don't want to have to separate them again, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make individual materials for each of these parts, then combine the parts together so that I can separate them later. Why do I want to do that? Sometimes to make less when it's a model that's a little bit bigger. This is one of Daniel's models, so it's pretty light in the poly department, so it's not really a big deal. But sometimes models are so big that you need to break them up. So you can combine them to bake them, but then you need to break them up again to get them into the game. Otherwise, the game won't like the whatever. If it's over 65,536 polygons, it's not happy. So let's get started. So we're going to check the hood. I'm going to delete this. You'll see it turns gray. I'm going to add a new material. I'm going to call it hood paint. Very creative. Then we're going to delete this. Cab paint. Also very creative. Maybe you want to add these on. Now what you'll have to do here, because these are listed as one piece in total, you'll have to press P. Why is my... You have to turn it on for each thing. There we are. That's very interesting. All right. So now if I press P by material, you'll see it separated it. So now I can bake these here. So I can do this as filter paint. And then the mirror is the same thing. I can press P and then material. And then I can select those and say mirror paint. Again, the most creative thing you've ever seen. Also, exhaust hangers. We want to separate those by material. Exhaust paint or a pint of beer or something. Sure. And it looks like we have some rivets that we'll need to add as well. So we'll say rivets paint. And then we have the rear paint. Rear cab paint. And we could do this if you really want to. That's pretty straightforward. So we'll do deck plate paint. Now, we're going to take all of these things and we're going to select them. So you're going to hold the Shift key and select all of those things, and you're going to press Control J to join them all. So we should have all of our paint pieces together. Now, what do we do from here? Well, this is where sometimes, oh, we didn't add the mirrors or the filters, so let's do that. Join again. There we are. So we have our mirrors and filters. All right, so in this particular case, Blender is, why is this in here? Interior diffuse. Oh, I must have added the interior in there. Okay, that's fine. So we'll do P by material. Okay, so let's fix this again. We'll go back in here, select the interior, hide it. Add this, and this, and this, and that, and that, and that. Undo. And that. And join. Are we missing something? Yes, we are. We're missing the exhaust. Join. Okay. We have all of those things now available. And then we're going to add that as well. All right, so now it looks like we have everything selected. All right, so let's have a look-see here. Yes, we do. Okay. So what do we do now? Okay, so when you bake something in Blender, what happens is Blender is taking an approximate value of all of the items around the items you're selecting and making a shadow of it onto itself, if that makes sense. So in here, where the side of the hood meets the fender, this is going to be darker in here than up here, because there's a natural shadowing that occurs when those two pieces of metal are really close to each other. Similarly, on the filters right here, because this is right up against the hood here, that's also going to produce a dark shadow. What this actually does in the game is if you just made this all one color and didn't do any baking to it, when you pull in the garage, these areas will still look like they're really shiny, like there's no shadowing. And it's a little bit different now because of the game having SSAO built in, but it's still not as complex as doing it on the texture itself. It's kind of hard to explain, but the reason why I'm telling you this particular, all of this information, is because if I bake this right now, this whole piece, it's going to take a shadow of everything around it. So you're going to have these particular headlights are going to be shadowed onto the hood here and onto the fender because they're close in proximity to this fender area. The filters are also going to shadow onto this rear part of this fender. This chrome plate is actually, if I hide it, it's in front of the base of the cab. So if I leave that there and I want it, this is going to be accessory, we'll say, and I don't include it on one of my models, like if that was an accessory, there's going to be a huge black strip all the way down here, because that was this piece was blocking the sunlight, if you will, in this case, from reaching the cab. So it's just going to be black. Same with the exhausts. If you have an exhaust now that also doesn't use these hangers later, you're just going to have big black rectangles right here if you remove these. Similarly, this particular bow tie style drop visor, if you leave this on here, it's going to produce a big black area behind this because it's expecting that shadow to be there. So what you need to do is you need to decide what things are going to be able to be removed from your truck in the game so that when you do remove it, there isn't evidence of something that used to be there underneath it. And it's also a good idea, like in the case of the interior, which I hid already, but you also want to hide that because you don't want to have any shadowing coming from the inside as well. So how do we rectify this? Well, we're going to be in the UV editing tab anyway, so I'm going to change it to that now. So let's move this aside so we can see what we're doing. Over here, this is a very important part, so pay attention to this here. Up in the right-hand corner, or wherever in your outliner there's restriction toggles. So these are the important things that we're talking about is up here. So disable and renders. So creating an AO is rendering something onto a material, essentially. You're making a material, you're making a texture, and you're rendering something in the Blender engine. So you need to turn this on. What does that do? It puts these right here on the side. So if I take this and I press H, you'll also notice that under here, it's missing, right? So it's hidden. And this must be the interior, now that I'm looking at it. Yes, it is. Okay. So this is the interior. So we want that hidden and disabled in renders. Otherwise, it will still render it when you're doing the inside portion of the truck. Or when you're doing the outside, if there's something that's so close to the inside, it'll also give it a shadow from the inside, which we don't want. So we have the interior hidden. Now you have to think about these things like this. So this you want to hide because you might want a different visor that doesn't have that same shape. And then if you don't hide it, it's just going to have that odd shape. So if you have one lower, then you'll see the darkened line underneath it, which we don't want. Now, the mirrors are generally in the same position on every truck. Some are different. I know on 3XX I have different ones, but for the case of this video, we're gonna leave it as such. We definitely don't want this shown. So this is on options. We don't want this shown because we don't want a black line on the bottom of that. These orange lights we don't want either. You can leave the exhaust if most of your exhausts are going to be side pipes. If you're going to have any in the back or anything like that, or you're going to have a single pipe, you probably don't want to bake them in this fashion, because what's going to happen is, say you do a single pipe and you're going to do the passenger side single pipe, then you're just going to have a darkened area right here behind where this pipe would normally be when you take the accessory off your truck in the game. So we don't want that. You want the Peterbilt logo on there. If you want to have it shaved or something like that, then you want to remove it and disallow showing it in the render. Okay, so things like the chrome pieces, the chrome trim around the doors, you obviously want to keep that. The door handles, you want to keep that. Again, the rubber coating around the windows, the windshield wipers, those aren't going to go away. The front grille, and even if whether it's chrome or color or whatever, it doesn't matter because it's just going to create a shadow on this part. It doesn't matter that this is chrome or paint in that case. So we're planning on putting mostly round, and this is where you can make decisions about your model on whether you're gonna include the shadow on the filters. Say you could remove these from the operation so that in the future you don't have the shadowing in case you wanted to do like a honeycomb filter on the side, or like a standard like just regular air intake on the side like some of the newer trucks have. Do you want to have the lights on the back? Are these lights going to stay here? If you want to make them an accessory, you want to find them in the list. They're circle 21 right here, and hide them, both in the viewport and from the render. Otherwise, like I said, they're going to show up. You remove them, there's going to be 2 black circles right here. So you have to make those decisions. On this plate on the back, are you always going to have the lights here? If not, you're going to have to hide them from the render. This is also going to shadow from this edge on the back. It's going to potentially shadow from these things here, right? Because there's some parts of this that meet up to the bottom, and that might be enough, and from the side may be enough. So you might want to hide them as well. So like this and that, and those are hidden. You definitely don't want the tires there. You gotta open those up first is what you gotta do there, Jeff. Okay, hide all those. That. Again, this is just extra precaution, which you may not want to do. It's totally up to you. Totally up to you. Okay. So I think we're ready to bake. We have everything we need. We know we're going to have a bumper here, so there's going to be a little bit of stuff here. We're going to have like this. Are you going to always have these available on the side? Are those always going to be there? Maybe. Maybe not. So you're going to want to find them in the list. Maybe I don't want them like that. So I'm going to hide them and disable them from the render. Do I have any underside pieces, or is this all just one? No, it's all one piece. Okay. Sometimes there's a rubber piece that goes underneath. If you leave that rubber piece underneath, it's going to produce a shadow on the top of this if you don't hide it correctly. Is there always going to be a fuel tank here? Or is it going to be a step? Maybe you want to hide these as well, because if it's a step, then there's going to be a big circular looking thing over here that's got a shadow on it that you maybe not, you don't want that. So we'll hide that. So I think we're in pretty good shape right now. Like I said, we want to keep all the filters and everything here. So now let's go ahead and do the next part. Now this is where you would, where you see this here. All you see is this little dot at the bottom over here in the UV map. Now, that's just because of how this was created. Realistically, for this, you don't need to make a UV map like you were painting it, like you were making it available for paint jobs. What you're doing is trying to make Blender have the easiest time to get everything separated and sorted so that when you bake it, nothing is overlapping. And that's where Smart UV Project comes in. So if you hit this button and then change your angle and change your margins, maybe. Sometimes I do like a 0.2, sometimes I do a 0.1, depending on how much stuff is there. And I press OK. Now this is going to separate all this into this thing. And you can see some parts of it if you look. So like this is the back door, right? So that's the back part of that section. There's parts of the hood. You can see the side of the hood. Here's some of the fender over here. Now, is this okay? Is this what it should look like? Oh, here's the deck plate right here. This is the deck plate. Well, yeah, so that looks okay. All of the pieces are separated nicely. There's nothing that's overlapping. Some of them are pretty close to each other, but that should be okay. So what do you do now? Well, now we're going into TexTools. Now you have to decide what you would like how big you'd like your bake to be. We're going to do a small one today at 1024 just because it takes forever, even on a powerful computer. So we're going to do 1024. Most of SCS's stuff are 1024 or 2048. Most of the big stuff that you'll find, like Ruda and Roland and Bart and those guys, use the 4096. There's also an 8K texture, which most computers wouldn't even be able to handle in SCS, frankly, depending on how small the parts are and how complex it is. So like I said, we're just doing 1024. You're going to have to experiment for yourself to find out what works for you and what you feel like looks best on the thing that you're trying to bake. Anti-aliasing. this is important because this allows for very, very fine detail in the bake, okay? So you want this on 4x if you can afford it on your machine. It's going to take, even on 1024, a million years, forever, to do on some of the older generation cards. It also, like I said, depends on the size. If it's really big and it's 4x, it could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes for it to do all of its baking. It's basically scanning every piece with essentially light all the way up and down, all the way up and down. And so as it does that, it's just going to take a long time. So just be wary of that. When you press that button, it's going to say not responding up here in the corner. Just don't worry. It'll be back, and it'll crash. It'll crash it if it's not going to work. Trust me, I know that much. So here's your options. What we're doing is there are a bunch of different ways that you can bake this. You can experiment with a couple of these, like cavity, paint base, smoothness, things like these. Paint base does work, but I use either AO or AO Legacy. Depending on how old and rugged I want the truck to feel, the AO Legacy is going to be the best in this particular case. Samples. This essentially is how many times it's checking that light, that shadowing area, how many times it's checking. So the less samples you have, the less quality of the shadowing you're going to have. So if you have, so here it is, the higher, less noise. So they want the default at 64. Again, another thing that makes it take longer. So 8 samples is going to be like, boom. 64 samples is going to be a bit longer. Okay. I've only ever done 64 as a max. I know some people do 128. And again, it all depends on how long you want it to take. I do a single texture bake across all of the objects because what you can do is you can actually select multiple objects at a time and do it in this same way. So I just join them as different materials and then separate them later, but you can also do it by part, selecting them here, making them all into this kind of selection here where they're already separated. I find this way easier just because the materials are then separated and I don't have to. It's easy to separate them and make them do whatever I want after the fact. So I do a single texture and that's it. That's all there is. So this baking section right here, the UV layout, that's a whole separate area we're not going to cover. Color ID, I don't even use this. I'm not quite sure what it does, frankly. And the mesh texture, again, not something that we're doing. TexTools has a full website on what all those things do and what they mean to you, if you ever want to read about them. So they are there. So we're going to go ahead and bake this. Stand by. Okay, so that was about 45 seconds. Now you'll see how this looks, right? So you get the shadows around the door parts. Here's the filter there. Stuff in the back, on the back door. But yeah, it looks like it covered everything. Here's where the headlights are and where the Peterbilt logo is there. Here's where the exhaust mounting brackets would be, as well as the door handle. So everything is there. Now, how do we get it from here to there? Image. You got to do image in this screen, okay? Image, save as. Now when I say save as, this has got to go into your folder for the truck that you're working on. So if I'm doing it for the 3XX, I want to go into vehicle, truck, Peterbilt 3XX, textures or wherever you have your textures. And I'm going to call this down here, first of all, don't forget this part, Targa. It's got to be a Targa. Okay. And then go down here and say body color, and then whatever it is. So in my case, it's going to be 367 high hood. Save as image. Okay. So now we have the image saved, so we're not going to lose it anywhere, which is important. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like on the truck and how to apply it to how to apply the materials, right? So here we are back to the original screen. So let's start with the cab. Let's go into up here on the top. We're going to go into material preview mode. Right now, when Daniel did this, he's had the chrome already loaded, so that's pretty cool. You'll be able to see that as well. So let's start with the cab paint. Now, how do you make a material? If you don't know how to do this already, it's pretty straightforward. So let's take care of that right now. So we go up here, cab paint. We're gonna create a material. We're gonna do truck paint. And then we're gonna do add vertex layer, or vertex colors, excuse me. The specular is always usually really high. So I usually, well, actually we're changing the reflection, so I'll leave it there. Shyness is 250. This is just default for SCS trucks. UV 0. Is there a UV 0 on this? Let's see. Go back to UV editing. Which one's this? This is UV 0. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So UV 0 is the number 1 map, and we can add the second one if you want. Nothing's happening there, but that's okay. We're going to go to where I put this file. Which was body color 367 high hood TGA. Select. Now it's got a funny color because I made it funny. Let's try if I can, let's see if I can make it. We'll do a nice Peterbilt red here or something. It's very neon pink. Okay. This is another thing that you may need to do. So we may need to go in here, go to vertex paint, go to selection tool, change this to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, paint set. Okay. And it's also not, oh, because I don't have the material on. Haha. Do not have the reflection available. Let's do that. That'll get us to where we need to be. We'll use the brushed reflection today. All right, so now we've got that done. We can go back up here, go to hood paint. We can actually change this so it does this all automatically for us. Like that. And then we'll change that again. Come on. Come on. That's better. Okay. Then we're going to do the hood. So we're going to go hood paint and make it a truck paint. We're going to add the correct file to it, which is vehicle, truck, Peterbilt, textures, body color. Maybe 0. So then we got filters. Oh, mirrors first. We'll do mirrors first. Truck paint. 0. Now, to make this easier, you can do it like this. I know what the file name is. Copy. Paste, enter. Same with the filters. I keep clicking on there even though I've added it. Truck paint. Paste. 0. Rear cab paint, truck paint, paste. And so on. Exhaust hangers paint. 0. Did we miss anything? Yeah, the deck. Gotta get the deck done. Deck plaint. Deck plaint. Deck plaint. Someday he'll be able to talk. All right, so now you can see as this intersects here, it's got that shadowing part right there because those two pieces meet. You can see all the shadows where the rivets are. You can see the shadowing under here where this comes together. Now, if I do this, if I take this and I press P, all right, now it's separated by material. So if I hide this and hide that, you can see what the side looks like. Same over here. If I take the rivets off, that's what it looks like. It also accentuates any graphics or any etching that has been done in the model itself. In this case, Daniel put his signature in there and such. Now, what else can you do with this? A couple of things you can do. If you don't like how, say, light or dark something is, save. So we can go into here and here. Here. And that should be on B. Right there. Open. So this is that file. So what you could do is, if you wanted it to feel a little bit darker, a little bit older maybe, or something like that, you find a color in here like that. Maybe a little bit gray over the top, right? So you add a layer, pick your gray, and then this. And then in that layer type, you can say overlay. or multiply, or additive, or burn. So I wonder if color burn will actually, I think color burn is going to actually make it pretty dark. So let's do this real quick. We'll do body color, save as. I always want to make backups of these. This is very important to make your backups. So we're going to save this in a PDN file in the pictures area so I can come back to it. And then we're going to save it as where it's supposed to go. TGA. Now if I reload this texture, so you can see how it darkens it up. It's just a little bit darker now. Not too much, but just a little bit. Enough that this interior is really bothering me here with the pink. Just darken it up enough that it maybe gives it that little bit of edge, you know, a little bit of darkness around the outside here. So now, as you can see, there's nothing down here. So when I put, where did they go? When I put these back on, well, those are the lights, yeah. So when you put those back on, it's just an add-on, right? They don't have to be on there all the time. So if you wanted to strictly, you know, work truck, no flashy chicken lights on the side or anything like that, you can leave it like that and it doesn't have that black strip over the front. So that's how you bake models, a model together in one specific thing. That's how I usually bake them all together. I'm actually in the process of going back through all of the 3XX cabs and stuff to redo them and stuff because of the single pipe that I'm going to be doing that is already out for the patrons right now because it's not going to look correct on some of them because it's expecting that driver's side pipe to be there, but that's why I have the arrow covering it right now. But that's it. Just remember those couple things. Make materials for each individual part, especially if it's a large model, lots of polys. Combine them all together, do the bake, save the texture into the folder where your truck resides, or where the other textures for your truck reside. Once that's done, you can apply it through the materials area over here, like so, and then export it and load it up into the game. Done. I hope this video was helpful for you. Baking parts is still something to do, as the SSAO in the game is not quite as effective as doing it through Blender or Zmod. You can fine-tune the file itself, which I showed you by adding that layer of a gray or a darker color than what was already there, and just push that bake a little bit over the edge to get a little darker for you, to really make it feel a little bit more real. So yeah, more questions about what to do in Blender, how to make things work, let me know. We'll get to those questions. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.